He is a federal police officer in Maryland. He was given a K-9 dog named Tambo. Had a great career with him, and he retired, Tambo did, as a result of an injury. He was diagnosed with cancer. Here's the thing. He says he learned so much about him from his dog, and his dog helped countless others. He's here to tell the story on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on youtube.com, and be sure to subscribe. Like everything we do, it is free. Look for and subscribe to Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on YouTube, where you'll find great police videos and episodes of the podcast. Best of all, it is free. Joining us from the great state of Maryland, we have Chris Bingham on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Chris is a federal police officer. We won't say which agency he works for or with. He is a K-9 officer. He's here to talk about his experiences with a K-9 named Tambo, Tambo, what he learned about himself through the dog, how the dog has helped so many people. The dog's retired due to injury. He's developed terminal cancer. He's still with us, doing well. And he's written a kid's book called K-9 Tambo, Tambo, K-9 Tambo, available on Amazon. Chris, A, thanks for your service, and B, thanks for being a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
John, thanks for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you
It's
today.
good to have you on because, quite honestly, look, people know this about me. I'm a big dog person. I love dogs. My wife, totally different level. But we have Rottweilers at home, and I've loved dogs my entire life. I had dogs when I was a teenager, all the way through police work. I never got into K-9 work. You want to know why? Because I knew I would get a dog that would just be barking nonstop in my ear.
Yeah, so it's funny because I'm the type, growing up, I'm the type of guy that would go to the social functions and with family, and I would always gravitate toward the dog was, in the house, and just kind of, I always liked hanging out with the dogs more than my relatives, and my parents always said, growing up, I need to kind of have a career working with dogs. So it just kind of, set its course from there of how I kind of got it, fell into K-9, getting into law enforcement.
And I love dogs. The truth is, I get along much better with dogs than I do with people.
Absolutely. Yep. That's kind of how it is. And, since I've worked 17, I've been in law enforcement now for 24 years. 17 of those have been spent with K-9. I was able to retire 3 of them. Tambo was my last. And, I'm in some leadership positions now, and it's just not the same. You definitely miss working with the dogs every day, being out and about, and just being in their presence. It's definitely, something that I, dearly miss since I've moved on from that.
One of the things that I've found for me is our dog, the Rottweiler named Enoch. He's a phenomenal dog. He came to us as an adult, and he's just one of the best dogs we've ever had. We've had 13 Rottweilers over the last almost 30 years. 5 at one time. My wife used to walk them. I walked them, and it's not a big deal. The thing is that, and I got to say this, and I'm not blowing my own horn, but when I take my morning walks with him, it's a short distance with him because he's not capable of doing long distances. Then I take him back home. Then I do a long sprint. And the long sprint, I meet every dog on the way, people walking dogs, and the dogs all love me. The people, not so much.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. Dogs, they pass no judgment, and it's funny. I've worked, 3 dogs, and I've, through other interviews, I've always called them my security blanket. Right, they're that kind of silent presence when you're going through, the trials and tribulations in life. And any K-9 handler can tell you this: is when you're going through something, it's just they're always by your side. It's that silent presence, that security blanket that, they never leave your side, and kind of makes things okay. And I think for all the stuff that I've dealt with in my life and, different traumas or the ups and downs or the trials and tribulations, it's that presence of my canines that's always kept me grounded and, been able to look forward and stay positive.
One of the things that we had with, and by the way, things have changed dramatically since I was policing. When I policed in Baltimore, the canine dogs they got were all rescues. They were picked out of shelters. They were the high drive, hyper vigilant, hyperactive dogs, and they trained them. And the training started with walking 2 miles a day with the handler, and a lot of them washed out. Now they're buying dogs. However,
yep.
There's a unique relationship with American policing and canine dogs, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, we're very particular with the dogs that we select, and, we look for that hunt and drive and the right fit for our mission. And I think it's different for, every department with what they're looking for. But we go out and, we still buy the dogs and we look for those traits that kind of fit our mission needs. And we look for, dogs that can turn it on and off, right? That can, when they come to work, they're ready to, fulfill that work mission, but also be able to have those social capabilities within, each handler's family when they go home.
And that's the thing there's two questions I got to ask you. A lot of people don't get this. They think that police dogs are the same as military dogs where they go to a kennel. The police dogs, from my experience, they usually go home with their partner.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of the, I'm glad you brought that up, John. That's a big part of the, the bonding process is that, you're in that work environment. A lot of times they're in obedience, they're in work mode. But when you take them home, how I've done with all three of my dogs is, after they've acclimated and you've got them adjusted to being in that home environment, when they come home, I just let them be a dog. And for me, that's really helped with the bonding process, right? And it's kind of like as humans, right? We go to work, we do our jobs, especially in law enforcement. Then when we come home, it's time to put on the family hat, to be a husband, to be a father, to take care of the things you need to take at home. You don't constantly want to be in work mode. So I think I've taken that same philosophy with the dogs, and I think it's really helped me have these exceptional bonds that I've had with each of my dogs, which each have been unique with, throughout my career. And I think that's a big part of it is being able to take them home and let them be a dog.
Right. And be a member of the family. That's what a lot of people don't get.
Absolutely. And, one of the funny things with Tambo is, when I got him, I came back to the unit. I had retired 2 dogs and left. And then I came back as our commander, and they weren't going to give me a dog. And so I went back and forth with my boss at the time, who was somebody I came up with on the K-9 unit, and they said I was going to be too busy. So we bantered back and forth for a year. And then finally she said, okay, you want to take a dog, you got to take Tambo. And the story on him was he wasn't aggressive. He was just a dog that was known that couldn't bond with anybody. And, most handlers, when they get on the unit, they want this instant bond with this dog. But just like us as with humans, sometimes that takes work. And, when I was looking at this dog, I saw a lot of the same attributes with me, right? It takes me sometimes a while to warm up to people and new environments. And I saw a lot of the same attributes. So with Tambo, it just took some time to kind of bond with him. But the story on him is like, he wasn't good at home. He wasn't good with kids. And, that could be furthest from the truth, because when I had my son, at 47, Tambo saw my son as an extension of me and was instantly gravitated toward him and did nothing but want to protect him. So it was really interesting.
We're going to take a short break. We're talking with Chris Bingham. Chris is a federal police officer. Won't say which agency he works for. He was with their K-9 department, and he had multiple K-9s before. But we're talking about one in particular. He came back as a commander, and he was assigned a dog named Tambo, Tambo. And let's just say he learned a lot of lessons about himself. And Tambo taught a lot of people a lot of things. He's written a K-9 or a book, children's book called K-9 Tambo, available on Amazon. And Tambo is now retired due to injury and going through terminal cancer. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Return our conversation with Chris Bingham on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Chris is calling us from Maryland. He is a federal police officer in the state of Maryland. He was given a K-9. Given a K-9. He came back as a commander, wasn't supposed to have a dog. He had two before that. And his dog turned out to be one that no one else wanted. His name was Tambo, Tambo. And they had a great police career together. He wrote a kid's book called K-9 Tambo. Tambo was retired due to injury, developed terminal cancer, is going through treatment now. And let's just say Chris learned a lot about himself from the dog. Chris, I want to set the table, so to speak. You come back as a commander. There's a different role. I retired with the rank of sergeant. There's a different role, different job responsibilities as a sergeant than there is as a police officer. And I'm sure it's the same way as a commander. And most commanders, if we use equivalent rank to Baltimore, it's about lieutenant rank.
Yep, I was a captain.
Okay, and by the way, most of those are administrative jobs. They're not on the street. So I'm kind of surprised that you were given a dog.
Yeah, and normally the captains weren't, and it was one of those things where, coming back to the unit as a former handler, knowing all the vision I had of where I wanted to take the unit was exciting. But then it's kind of like, I always say once a handler, always a handler. And you're seeing, this high functioning team, everyone having dogs, and you just badly want to be a part of that. And I was the type that always wanted to lead from the front. So, I kind of wore my boss down over time, bantering back and forth.
So it was
for the
you.
dog.
It was you nagging the boss for the K-9 dog. It wasn't the other way around.
Yes, and I tell you, the backstory on it is when I got selected for the unit back in my early 20s. There was the current commander was named Bernie, and he took a chance on me because I was a young guy that I grew up without a dad, never really had any direction, always had that chip on my shoulder of when you grow up without a dad, it's always that thing inside of you saying, "Am I good enough?" And so. I was the type that people said, "Oh, you're not going to make the team, this and that." So he was a guy that took a chance on me. I had some initial issues with my first dog, worked through it, had a great career with him, worked my second dog, retired her, and then moved on. So when I came back, he was our deputy chief of police, and he ended up selecting me for that position. So coming back full circle and taking over for a mentor was something that meant so much to me. But the crazy part about it is, a few weeks after he selected me for that position, he died of a heart attack. And that hit me really hard because growing up without a dad, this was a man that took a chance on me when no one else did, saw something in me that I didn't really see in myself, and helped me develop to not only become a good handler, but to come back and lead a high-functioning K-9 team. And then this mentor just dies after, selecting me. So, and then something hit me, John. I realized everything that had gotten me through those hard points in my life of loss and things before was that presence of a dog. And I was kind of missing that. And then also I didn't really feel a part of the team. And that's when I got persistent with pestering my boss with giving me a dog in that position.
Use a different word. I use nagging. You use pestering.
There you go. And then I was kind of given the take it or leave it deal after I wore her down, because when she said, "Fine, you can have a dog," I'm thinking, "Oh man, I'm going to go out to our vendor and pick out this brand new dog." I'm thinking about all the names, and then she says the name Tambo. And the backstory on him is he had bounced around from two handlers. And again, no aggression, just couldn't bond with him, was known as stubborn, aloof, guarded. And I was very hesitant at first, but then I said, "You know what? I'm up for the challenge." And I remember going and getting Tambo out of the kennel this first day, and I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at all these labels that he had been given: guarded, stubborn, aloof. And I realized, John,
you could be talking about me. When you say guarded, stubborn, and aloof, those are three characteristics I have.
Yeah, and that was me too. And I was looking in a mirror version of myself. And then it hit me. I was like, this was meant to be. This is something that was meant to be. And this dog just needed somebody to take a chance on him. And right from then there, I knew that this was going to be a good partnership. It was just going to take time. So
I'm sitting here thinking, and for those almost at the table, for those who don't know about police work, and there's a military or paramilitary chain of command. So no matter who you have or how high a rank you have, even the police chiefs, they have a boss they answer to. So you've got to, and you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to get this. This is going to happen, and I'm going to have the confrontation with my boss. And I can see your boss relenting, saying, okay, wise guy, you want it? Here's the dog you're going to get.
Yeah, and I think deep down she knew because we had grown up, came up as handlers together, and we were able to have that. She would hold me accountable when she needed to, but we were able to go back and forth. And I think she knew deep down that I would be up for the challenge, and I think she wanted to see if I was willing to take it. And I think deep down she knew that I would take it. And I still thank her to this day for bringing Tambo and I together.
Before we go into more of your story with you and Tambo, I got to say this. It is so rare for someone to reach the rank of captain in any department, let's just say captain of K-9s, and to be having a dog. That just doesn't happen. Usually the command staff, the captains and above, a lot of times they have no experience with that unit. So, number one, you're an oddity. You came in, you experienced that unit, and you had a dog. That doesn't happen. Those two things quite often don't happen.
And I think one of the things, John, and I think you're right, when people come into specialty units and try to manage it, sometimes it's difficult, right? And when you have that experience, where we've tried to do is you already garner that respect of the ins and outs of that unit. And there's pros and cons to all of that. And the pros were that I knew the ins and out of the unit. I knew what the handlers were going through and what they were going to experience. But you're right, it was a high functioning unit, and normally that doesn't happen, and this was an anomaly where, I kind of was able to maneuver that and be able to get that and say, hey, I can still take care of all of my administrative functions, but I also want to lead from the front. And I think I was able to successfully do that over the course of my tenure of 7 years in doing that.
Before we go further, before we take a break and go further into your story, I remember having a major talk to me. I said, you're a sergeant now. Your role is different than a police officer, and you got to do sergeant stuff. It's different. You're still going to want to show these men that you can do the job. Men, that means men and women, you can do the job. You're not going to ask them to do more than you do. However, you have a different responsibility. Was that a speech given to you?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a fine line, right? And especially how leadership has evolved, and I've built my leadership on building that trust through those informal conversations. And anytime you take over a unit, you want to meet with your personnel, which I did. But I think it's for me, it was building having those informal meetings, building that trust and building that buy-in. And when you do that, and it's time to hold them accountable for their actions, good and bad, especially the bad
time
part.
To do the captain stuff. We're taking a short break on that note. We're talking with Chris Bingham. He's a federal police officer in Maryland, and he had a canine dog named Tambo. That he learned a lot of lessons about himself, helped him develop the person he is today. He wrote a kid's book called K-9 Tambo, available on Amazon. We'll talk more about that when we return. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
They say that it's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you save. And that is partially true. If you can take some of that savings and turn it into high-yield investments, you are way ahead of the game. Get more details on how you can get started at letsavings.com. letsavings.com. Again, that's letsavings.com.
Return to conversation with Chris Bingham on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. He is a federal police officer. He worked K-9 for a long time, and he came back as a captain and was given a dog after lots of pestering by him, using a word he used. And the dog's name was Tambo, and Tambo had some issues that he learned a lot about himself and had a great career with. He wrote a kid's book called K-9 Tambo, Tambo, available on Amazon. Chris, take us to your police career, Tambo. You meet him. He's got all these labels. He's guarded.
Yep.
He doesn't bond very well with people. He's aloof. Look, first of all, what breed of dog was what breed of dog is Tambo?
Tambo was a German Shepherd, and he was my first one because my first two dogs were Malinois, and obviously, you probably know John. They're a little bit different, more high-strung, and different from, the Shepherd. So Tambo, everything he did was a little more, methodical. Where I always called my Malinois were like Tasmanian devils, on the leash. So Tambo, being a Shepherd, was more methodical in how he did things. He processed things a little bit different, and I always said when it comes to working dogs, and I'd always tell the handlers and trainers this, the more dogs that you can handle or work, the more you understand the behavior, because you get to experience, the different personalities, the different breeds. So it's kind of nice switching from the Malinois to a German Shepherd, something different and a new experience. And
the thing is, and I say this all the time, we've had 13 Rottweilers. They all look the same. They're well-bred. They're AKC champions. They're multi-V1 rated Schutzhund dogs. You name them. But they're all different. They have unique personalities. Similar breed characteristics, but they have different personalities. Was Tambo anything that you were used to as far as what the breed personality is supposed to be?
So he was more like he was very independent, and you want that in a working dog first and foremost. So I don't want people to think that you don't want an independent dog, but I think Tambo wanted to kind of do everything on his own. And when you're working a dog, especially during detection work, is you want the dog to work independently, but when you need to step in, you need to be able to direct that dog, and that dog to kind of follow directions. So the way I was able to kind of build that up, because when we first started doing, detection repetitions, he kind of just wanted to work everything on his own pattern and everything like that, where I kind of just built things up through basic repetition, just from being consistent with my actions of what I did. So that was, I didn't take him home every day. I went up every day. I fed him his breakfast at the same time. I took him out for walks at the same time. And when you do that, these dogs like routine, right? So he got used to that. He appreciated the routine. And then as we started to move forward with our training and our detection, I'd step in, and then he was like, okay, I'm things are more consistent. I'm starting to trust him. And he was already a great detection dog, but it was just mastering that with the handler, because the dogs essentially know what they're doing. It's always usually the handlers that screw the dogs up.
Isn't that the way with humans and most breeds of dogs? I always look, and I'll get back to your story in a moment. The people with little dogs, the little pocketbook dogs, they're so cute. And they're usually the worst behaved dogs, because it's usually the owner at the end.
Yes, exactly. It's usually the tiny dogs like that are snapping at people and barking all the time, and so the ones that are out of control. You're right.
And by the way, they would not tolerate that from my Rottweiler, but they'll tolerate that from a long-haired Chihuahua all day long, and they think it's cute.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you see that in shelters where they'll deem a dog like a Rottweiler that does that dangerous, but then you have a little tiny dog and they're like, oh, that's just them being them.
Right. Exactly. So is it safe to say that Tambo had a lot of traits that were similar to you?
100%. He didn't want to trust right away. He wanted to kind of do things on his own, and he was kind of aloof. And those are the traits that I kind of picked up just from growing up. I always say, growing up without my dad, I kind of grew up without. I lost my best friend before it even started, right? And when that happens, at least for me, you start putting that armor up, right? And where you try to, when you're young, you try to act like things don't bother you, or because you're different than the standard family, not having your dad around, so you try to act like things don't bother you, or you can do things on your own. And over time, you build that armor up. And this all came from self-reflection, John, over the years. And then especially, having Tambo, I realized a lot of those things that, we were similar in our actions. And for one reason or another, Tambo had, developed those traits, and we were similar in a lot of ways.
Is it safe to say that, and all these traits that you talked about, my dad, he passed away 30 years ago from cancer, terminal cancer. It was horrible to watch, but he's a profound influence on my life. My mother's a profound influence. The guys down the street were a profound influence. The nuns who taught me were all big influences. But I changed as a result of police work. And I would say some of that's positive, some of it's negative, and some of it's a lot of what you talk about. So prior life experiences and police experiences, have they kind of damaged you?
I think the prior, yeah. I mean, it's what created a lot of those. Some people say negative traits, but in the same term, John, it's what's driven me to be successful.
I don't think it's negative at all. I think that's what makes good police.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I think constantly, and the one thing is I need to stop and smell the roses a little bit, but it's always driven me to be better. And I guess it's always kind of, this chip on my shoulder of wanting to, prove people wrong, even though, I'm doing all these great things. It's sometimes you feel like you need to do more, but in the same terms, it's helped me learn from, a lot of the things that I don't want to be in life and to be a better person. So I was able to turn a lot of that into positives in my personal life, and definitely in police work, and absolutely in leadership when it comes to, communication and guiding high functioning teams.
Well, the older I get, the more selective I'm. I get more of a voice in who I want to be, and the kind of guy I want to be. And I always say this: I'm not the guy I want to be yet, but thank God I'm not the guy I used to be. And by the way, that guy was not all bad. He was not all bad at all. But there's a lot of things have changed.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and absolutely, I think, regardless of how old we are, we're still evolving. And I still think we all have to have the mindset of that we can continue to evolve and get better, as a person, regardless of where we are in our life.
And that's absolutely true. When you said earlier detection dog, there's two, and this is going to show my ignorance. There's K-9 patrol dogs. That's what we think of K-9s. Then we have drug or explosive or gun detection dogs and or finding missing people. What kind of dog was he?
He was an explosive detection dog, and I always say it's funny that, the explosive detection dogs, they're kind of like sometimes the Rodney Dangerfield of police work. Is they don't get the respect that they deserve, because I say that because the narcotics detection dogs, they're out, they're getting all the fines, and then you have the patrol dogs getting the apprehensions. But it's the explosive detection dogs that I always say that are doing the dirty work, right? They're deterring things. They're doing the work that nobody sees behind the scenes. The bomb threats, the suspicious packages, the preventative measures where somebody may be looking at procedures and they see that deterrence there and they decide not to do something. So I don't think they always get the respect that they deserve, because I think what's always in the public eye is the patrol aspect of things, right? That's the sexy thing to kind of look at, or the narcotics with the fines and stuff like that.
And by the way, he had to be a German Shepherd, so people don't know whether or not you're next to a guy in uniform. There's a German Shepherd there. They don't know he's a detection dog, a K-9 patrol dog. They just don't know. We're talking about Chris Bingham. He is a federal police officer in the state of Maryland. He was given a K-9 dog named Tambo, and he came back as a commander. He's given a K-9 dog, and he had a great career with him, and he retired due to an injury. And Tambo was diagnosed with terminal cancer, which we'll talk about in a few moments. And I learned a lot of lessons about himself. He wrote a kid's book called K-9 Tambo. That's K-9 Tambo, which is available on Amazon. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We got so much more to talk about. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Be sure to download the free Clubhouse app. It's like having your own talk radio station on your phone. And best of all, it is free. Be sure to follow John J. Wiley at LET Radio Show and look for major announcements. That's right, the Clubhouse app is free, and be sure to follow him for major announcements. That's John J. Wiley or at LET Radio Show. Did I mention that it is free?
Turn conversation with Chris Bingham on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Chris is a federal police officer. and he was in K-9 as a captain, as a commander, and he was given a K-9 dog that's highly unusual. The dog's name was Tambo. Tambo had a lot of character traits that a lot of handlers didn't like, and let's just say he learned a lot of lessons about himself during his police career. He wrote a kid's book called K-9 Tambo. It's K-9 Tambo, which is available at Amazon. Tambo was retired due to injury. Tambo now has terminal cancer, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Chris, number one, I love dogs. We've talked about this earlier. I think it's great, but each one is different, and they bring out the best in me, and people oftentimes don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And dogs tend to get you to see the simplicity in life, right? And just in taking a step back and just enjoying the little things in life and how they live their life every day. I think we as humans can take lessons from them all day long.
As a police officer, did you feel any kind of like backup and safety as a result of having a K-9 working with you?
Yeah, I mean it's always that presence. Even when you leave for work every day, there's something to say about when you get up at 4 a.m. and you're getting in your SUV and you got your dog with you. You're going into that battle, whatever that is that day. You're not alone, and it's having that presence. I always again that silent presence with you that knows that you kind of have that backup and you have somebody you're kind of your ride or die with you that's going to be with you no matter what happens. And
I imagine that's a great feeling that knowing this dog's got your six all the time. However, there's a flip side to that, which a lot of people don't talk about. That's the responsibility that you have to make sure the dog's okay.
It's a 24/7 responsibility, and I would tell new handlers that all the time that wanted to come on the team is they want the status of being a handler and working them during the course of their workday, but that job doesn't end there. When you go home, it's your responsibility. When you're working, it's your responsibility to ensure their safety as well and have their six, and also make sure that they're being taken care of after that day is over. So you have to be committed for it, and it's a job that's not for everybody, and it's a job that not everybody can do.
No, as I said earlier, I couldn't do it. As much as I love dogs, I couldn't do it because I would just have the dog that would, my luck, I'd have a German Shepherd that was nonstop, and I just can't. I can't tolerate that after a while. And during the police career working with Tambo, what's one of the highlights you take from that?
I tell you, you being from Baltimore, I'm sure you have an appreciation for this. I take pride in our unit's dog as kind of being the Cal Ripken, the Iron Man, right? Uh-huh. We're for explosive detection dogs. We searched high volume of vehicles. So, Tambo searched over 10,000 detection sweeps throughout his career, which is kind of, in the explosive detection world, unprecedented. That a lot of, state and local, they may get their explosive detection dogs out, 1 or 2 times, 3 times a week for a search where we're constantly doing volume. So I take pride in the amount of detection sweeps that he had, but, we did, presidential inaugurations. We've had a lot of, VIP support, which I can't really, talk about too much on here, but right. A lot of those details that you take pride in being able to be there and represent and know that you're safeguarding, the country when you're doing it.
I saw from the notes that he retired due to an injury. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he was getting up there in age. He was 9 years old, so we had worked 7 years together, and we would retire the dogs at 10 automatically. So he was already, creeping up toward that retirement age, and we were doing a search on a tractor trailer, and it's nothing that we hadn't done, 1,000 times before. But this time he kind of misguided his jump into the back of the vehicle, to the tractor trailer, and on the lip he hit his front right leg and tore a ligament, which significantly, hindered his mobility. And instead of kind of putting him through the surgery, which we could have, it was at that point it would have been more conducive for him to have quality of life, right. In retirement. So, that's what we decided to do. So we had to make that transition into retirement at that time.
Was Tambo your last dog working as a police officer?
He was, and I kind of wanted to end it that way, John. I'd had a long career, and just that bonding experience with Tambo and the similarities. I kind of wanted to end my K-9 career at there, and I'm a type that I believe in succession planning, and I had some good leaders under me that were ready to take over the unit, and I felt like it was a good time to kind of end it there.
Gotcha. Now it's a very uncomfortable topic. By the way, I love dogs. They're going to reward you every day when there's one really bad day. Tambo is diagnosed with terminal cancer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, after he had he retired and he had the ligament tear. He had some other unfortunate luck where he had a double ACL tear, chasing of all things a squirrel in the yard.
I was going to say squirrel.
And what most people don't know with dogs, when one ACL tears, the other one's prone to tear with it. So we took him in for orthopedic, and so that's when Project K-9 Hero kind of came into our life. And for those that aren't aware of Project K-9 Hero, they're a national nonprofit that provides health care for dogs in retirement. And what also people don't know is when these working dogs retire, to no fault of any of the departments, there's just nothing set up for them financially. So that burden of cost falls on the handlers.
And by the way, most the K-9 departments or K-9 units have no funding at all. It's all done by volunteers and voluntary cash donations.
Yeah, and it's different for a lot of departments where that funding comes from, but absolutely there's nothing set up for them in retirement. So we were looking at surgeries for 2 surgeries, $14,000, and I'd met the founder of Project K-9 Hero, Jason Johnson, at a conference a couple years earlier, and he'd helped another dog on our unit. So he got Tambo, right into the program, funded the surgery. Tambo made a full recovery, and I'm the type that likes to give back. So Tambo kind of became an ambassador for Project K-9 Hero. So we were doing a lot of events, and we had just did the Philadelphia Phillies for Tambo's 11th birthday for their salute to service, which was a great experience. My son was there. We got honored on the big screen. Everybody, wished him happy birthday. So life was good. And it was a random day. Went to work. And I got to work that day, and I was just feeling off, wasn't feeling right, and something told me I needed to leave work early that day, and I did, and came home. Tambo usually greets me at the door, was nowhere to be found. I found him in my dining room. He was sprawled out. His gums were pale. I knew it was indicative of blood loss. Got him over to the vet. They came out and said, your dog is in the process of bleeding out. He has multiple masses on his spleen, and which one of them ruptured. Wow. And they said that you need to let him go. He most likely he won't make it through the surgery. And I said, well, what are my options? And they said, well, if you want us to try, we can remove the spleen and give him a blood transfusion, but most dogs don't make it through this. And we're pretty sure this is
especially older dogs.
Yeah, and we're pretty sure this is hemangiosarcoma, which is a terminal cancer. So I called Jason up from Project K-9 Hero, which was funded as healthcare, and Jason asked me what I wanted to do. And I told him, I said, I'm looking at Tambo, and this is a very stoic dog. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in this dog's eyes. But I saw something else, John. He was telling me he wasn't ready. I was so bonded with this dog, and I said, he's not ready. And Jason said to me, he said, Chris, we got your back 100% with whatever you want to do. So I told them right then and there, I wanted to move forward with that surgery. And we did. And they removed his spleen. They gave him a blood transfusion. He was up and walking within 2 days. And then a few days later, they came back and confirmed the biopsy was cancer, that it was terminal, and they gave him 2 weeks to live.
Will you give him a big treat for me, because he's a special guy. We're almost out of time. You've written a kid's book called K-9 Tambo. Was part of that cathartic, or did you do that to continue his legacy?
It inspired me with all the cancer patients that I was inspiring, all the kids that are battling cancer, to kind of give something back. Kids that feel unseen or sick, that in a way that they can understand, to not give up.
Check it out. It's kids book, K-9 Tambo, available on Amazon. Chris, thanks for your service, and thanks for being a guest on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. But very much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.